the main purpose of creating art in these times is to be able to open conversations and to help us think together of what it means to be human today and where are we going. I'm Joanna Shumali. I live and work in Abidjan. I'm a photographer and visual artist, and I'm Ivorian, proudly African. And I'm proudly a woman as well, and I'm myself. And my work helps me being myself every single day. When I started photography, I wanted to be, it was at the time where there were not many female photographers in my country or in my environment. So I wanted to be a good photographer technically and to be recognized as a good photographer. But at the moment, I felt like I really needed something more, adding something more, and be in touch with the work physically and touch it and spend more time with the work. There was a terrorist attack in my country, in the city of Grand Bassam. I went there 3 weeks after the terrorist attack, and I shot some pictures with my iPhone. I was just observing the landscape, the people, the non-verbal statements in the area, and I could see it everywhere, like melancholy, sadness. I was frustrated because I couldn't really express what I felt about this moment, and at the same time I had health issues. So I was stuck because I wanted to do photojournalistic project, portraitures, things that I used to do before, but I was restrained in my practice. I needed to do something, and it was very, very instinctive. I printed the work, the pictures on canvas, and I started embroidering in small sizes, which was at the same time something that was not common, because in my imagination, successful works were bigger works. And so I started the project for myself. I just want to do something to use my mind and my creativity to process. And that's what I really did, without even thinking about if I was going to show it, if people would understand. And at the same time thinking, oh, but you are a photographer, why are you embroidering now? This is not something that I was doing before, and I'm self-taught in embroidery. And even I was not even sure that I was going to do it properly, and if I would be even skilled enough to do something that could be shown to other people. But I really wanted to do it because it was like catharsis. It was even, I felt like I was guided. It was a satisfying process because it was a meditation, and I felt comfort in the repetitivity of the gesture. And it was also like, it was the first project that I did without planning it, without writing it before, without thinking how and where it would land, if it would even go somewhere. I just focused on my perception of what was going on around and what was going on inside. And I was not at all, I never thought that anybody would get. That's why I was so, overwhelmed. And when I received the prix for this project, I've never imagined that. Because maybe I was not aware that what I injected in the work would be able to, that some other people would be able to understand or to feel it. So that's a real experience, like a tangible experience of the impact of art in my life and in other people's life. That's a proof, if I can say. first image, the first work that I have in mind is a new normal. It's a piece that I made here at home, in this room. It's a picture of Dakar in the early morning. It was the last travel that I made before the pandemic. When I go for walks in the morning, I do both pictures. I photograph pictures of the landscape of the city, and I photograph as well silhouettes, people I meet in the streets with my smartphone. And then I print them, and I print the silhouettes on a big panel, and I cut them out. And then I recreate the experience that I had at this moment. So I embroider some parts that I feel like I want to highlight, and then I add these layers of several silhouettes. And what I mostly like is that I don't even think about if it will be cohesive, or if people will think that it's. I'm not trying to make an illusion. I don't care about scale that much. If it feels right to my eye, it's good. I don't think about the mathematics or the geometry of if this silhouette is too big for the reality. And I like as well this idea of this feeling of strangeness, that it's real but not. And that's also why I keep defining myself as a photographer, even if I'm doing mixed media, because photography is at the core of my work, because it keeps the reality on the piece. The work are dreamy, but there's still reality, and that's exactly what I want to convey through the pieces, because when I observe the city, when I shoot the pictures, I'm in between reality and dream, between my inner dreams and my inner landscape and the outer landscape. So, and then I add layers of sheer fabric, because this is something that is very specific to this area of the world. In the early morning, there's always kind of a beautiful mist. And this mist is partly because of the humidity. And I realize that most of the cities that I photograph are by the sea, or by a river or a laguna or something, because at the same time, I'm always drawn to water because of the soothing element of water, and the stillness as well. So each piece, this piece, for example, New Normal, is a recreation of like a mix of past, very near past, and present. And it's documenting for the future this situation of new normal, because now we are all with masks and we must accept this fact. When I was working on the project, I was thinking about the way I felt when I shot the picture. Total freedom of tomorrow is, for me, is mine, and everything will be the same until I die. And the difference between this moment and the moment I was working, like the fact, the silhouette that I had to work on the piece, add them the way they are with the mask. So that's how the title of New Normal came out to me, because obviously this is what we are going through, and we will have to adapt to this. So the layers are a technical way to recreate the feel of the early morning, but it's also a way to document the different layers of one moment in one area from one perspective and how it will be perceived by another person with another perspective, and trying to focus as well on what makes us human, like this experience of poetry and dreamy experience is very human and very universal. So everything is impacted by the pandemics. I used to travel at least 3 times a month. That change was not that bad for me because it helped me focus really on my practice, working on even more intricate pieces, and being as productive as I used to be before. An opportunity to be able to photograph cities in my country for my ongoing project, and to keep photographing and working in my city, Abidjan. It's strange to say that, but it brought me more focus and more peace. Because when you face death and chaos and so much fear, at the end of the day, you are like, okay, can I change things or not? If you cannot just make the best of what you have. At the same time, I feel privileged to be able to translate my feelings and to go through it through creativity, and even to still be able to work, to be able to express myself. So I work differently because it's less for the purpose of sending it to an exhibition or doing it's for myself. It's like more, I feel more pleasure, more gratitude when I'm working. Because when I think about people whose work profession is totally stopped because they cannot, it's forbidden for them to go out and do their activities, the professional activity, I feel like I'm lucky, and I don't take it for granted anymore. And each work that I do is first for myself. It's as an act of survival. Art is more than vital in this era that we are in. But now I'm really on the observation of what is going to happen and how even the experience are different from a side of the world to another, how things are perceived in your country versus how they are perceived in my country, how cultures impact as well the way we deal with the pandemic. For example, in Côte d'Ivoire now, the reality of the pandemic is very different from what we hear in Europe. But here, there are still some artistic experiences, some artistic initiatives. There are still some exhibitions, less ambitious, but still. For example, now there's an exhibition in the Museum of Agogo. It's a retrospective of art, the history of art. And I was very proud and surprised even to be included in this exhibition. And you can even see some little initiatives from young artists, young collectives doing small exhibitions, very, very, very small exhibitions. And what I want to say is that we adapt. And that's one of the main qualities that my country has, is adaptation. And so yes, there's we cannot travel, but the work can travel, and Ivorian people are focusing on their own art, and so there's always a way to interact and to share in a different way. they are lucky to be artists. Because some people wouldn't be able to work now and they wouldn't be able to process their thoughts, their feelings. The first thing is not to overthink what they are doing, but just let themselves go through the process. If they feel restrained, how do they translate it into their work? If they feel they don't see the future, then they don't see the future. They should accept that. If they want to express anger or fear or love or hope, anything that they want to express, it's the right moment to do it in their own terms. I know that there are tendencies, most of the times you can find some tendencies in the art world, and some artists are, appealing to follow the tendencies, but what I would advise them is to do totally the contrary, to work for themselves first. And if the work is sincere, it comes from the guts, people will get it. I always think that being an artist is a plus. Even it can be very painful for being too sensitive or too this or to that. At the same time, it saves you to be able to translate through colors, through shapes, through different mediums, something that will talk through straight to someone else. Some people would not associate the fact of being sensitive or soft or a dreamer or be awkward as being an African. But why? So sometimes I joke, I remember that I used to joke with my mother, telling her, see, when I was a child, you were worried about me because I was dreaming too much. You were worried that how I would make it in this world by being so tête en l'air. But actually that's my main, that's my main income now. That's my main income comes from being a dreamer and sharing it with other people and just being myself. And to me, it's the best testimony that I can give to the world is that just being yourself and not fearing being different and not being where you are expected and not apologizing for that.
I was inspired by hearing what she was saying about the power of being able to use art to express yourself, so to heal yourself. And it made me think about the real power of art when you live it, and you can live it on your own skin, or you can share it with others. And Wanto, he is an artist that knows very well and has reflected a lot on. I know that you have reflected a lot on this power and this experience of healing through art, especially on a series of projects, I would say, correct me if I'm wrong, that you've started several years ago and that you have developed in several forms, and one of which you have worked with your daughter as well, and you shared this journey with your daughter, and that addressed the issues of female genital mutilation. And how would you relate to what Joanna was saying about the power of this healing nature that can be part of the artistic experience?
Well, I discovered images, old images, in a drawer. I call it the forgotten drawer. They were representing a ceremony of circumcision, which of course it's a mutilation. But at the time, I didn't know much. It was many years ago. I didn't know much about it. I didn't know that there were 200 million of women in the world survivors of female genital mutilation. So when I realized that through search on Google, I realized that as an artist, I had a responsibility to do something about it. And And I did something a little bit like Joanna. I decided to enlarge them to up to 3 meters high or large, and to create a flower to be a symbol of a renaissance for women, to invite women to ponder into realizing really who they are, and fight for them to be complete. And that's why came the idea of getting testimony from all over the world where women are in a protest and they are making changes and taking their life in their hands, and they are breaking the cycle of that ancestral custom of the circumcision of female genital mutilation. So there is the images, the visual images, the flowers, and the 1,000 voices.
Yeah, we will now listen to a fragment of this sound piece, which you realized together with your daughter. And it's basically you recorded, and I think the interesting part of this project is that before the pandemic, this is a very kind of real but virtual experience, like, because you did it through WhatsApp, if I remember well.
Yes. Before the pandemic, much before. The first interview was in New York. We went to interview a lady from the Daoudi Bora community. And she showed me that all around there, all the little girls had been mutilated. Well, it's hard to even for me to say that word, but it's female genital mutilation. So she had accepted the interview. It is when I realized that it was not about filming their face, but it was about hearing them. And I think in that way, the process of healing, the healing part comes from them talking without, they are really saying things which are very profound, very hard, very intimate. And if it had been a film, I don't think it would have created that intimacy and that depth.
I'm Arifa.
My name is Shabana Firoz.
I am Alifia Suleimanji.
My name is Sherbanu.
Something terrible happened to me when I was 7
When I was 7, my mother took me to the house of a strange lady from my community, the Daoudi Bora community.
أول حاجة مش مهم الاسم ولا السن، المهم إن ده حصل. I am a victim of female genital mutilation, FGM.
Kaji Joyce, Karine Soive, Raranga Nadinelli, Sama Kara Larin Tigram, Ara Larin Tigramo, Obo, Arene Kenya, Ara Christian.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Marly, j'ai 27 ans et je suis française d'origine guinéenne.
Moi, c'est Fofana Saran, je suis originaire de la Guinée, c'est un pays de l'Afrique de l'Ouest qui est à côté du Sénégal et du Mali.
My name is Tara Magula. My name is Aissatou Bangura. I am Christian by religion. I'm a Christian by religion. 25 years old. Sierra Leonean by nationality. Ajirankan esta parkesiam.
Ne tɔgɔ de ye ko Kajatu
Me
Doumbia.
llamo Aise, soy de Toledo, mi origen es de Mali.
Ne wolola Bamako, Mali la.
Nye kila ko mambe dia. Zanye bina ni ki. Nye koyaga ele, me nye voare ni ka bomango. Nye shama ele.
My name is Filza. I'm 28 years old. I'm from Singapore and I'm a Muslim.
I am Dr. Renee Bergstrom, a white Christian, age 72, from the United States of America.
My name is Shema Bari. At the time of this recording, I am 22 years old.
أنا مقعيق وحوين حمد إسماعيل حنكون والله هاي مقالة هرقيسة.
مقعيق وسارة عبد الرحمن حسين وحنكون وراي قبل كمرود جح مقالة هرقيسة.
My name is Hoda Ali. I am 39 years old from Somalia. I am Muslim.
My name is Fatih Silla. I come from Sierra Leone, Freetown. I live in Australia, Sydney. I'm here to share my story about FGM. I was born in a society where such inhuman act is widely practiced because I was a woman. I became a victim of my circumstance because of my place of birth and simply because I was a female.
In 1947, when I was 3 years old, My clitoris was removed by a fundamentalist Christian doctor who believed masturbation was a sin.
L'excision en Guinée, dans le village d'où je viens, est pratiquée chez les petites filles aux alentours de 7 ans, 8 ans.
I know that you have been exhibiting this piece in several different locations, and I can only imagine the impact of, I know that it's been heard in big spaces, once in a church, I think, and the power, the heaviness of hearing so many voices from so many different women, it's very strong.
It's giving them back their power somehow, isn't it? And I heard from them that talking about their trauma allowed them to really heal. It was a risk, you know, because to go back to that, it could remove things in a way that you create more harm than good. But mostly, if not all, it's interesting. When we were in Paris, actually, with Katia, we had a lady who heard the voices, and she came to me very quietly and she said, you know, there is really something that I find quite strange when I was listening to those voices. There are 36 countries in 24 languages, by the way. And the piece lasts at the moment more than 2 hours and a half on a loop. But she said, for the while she was listening, she said, I didn't see any rage. She didn't see any, the women were just telling their story. And it's the first time I heard that. I thought it was extremely touching, that they were not furious. They were just saying what happened in order to stop the cycle. And as I said many times, as Oda Hali has said, she's an activist, she spoke actually, we could hear her. She said, if you save one girl, you save a whole generation, because your daughters are not going to educate you with the ancestral tradition of circumcision anymore. Then we create a new world. Healing.
I would like to add something that touched me deeply, is that all the women have names, full names. They present themselves with names and surnames and their age and their identity, and it's so powerful to give them the opportunity to present themselves as beings, full beings, human beings first, and they are more than what happened to them, and they're still powerful. And it touched me. It touched me a lot.
There is the journalism and documentation, but often these sources that are supposed to somehow bring out justice actually are the ones who cut out the names, the identity. Also, maybe they insert that rage that, as Wanto was saying, maybe it's not there because it's not the rage that we need. We need something to process what we are going through.
I'm changing the narrative. They are not now going to celebration where they are going to be cut, and where they have heard from their parents, tomorrow you are going to be a woman. That's really what happened. So there's at that stage in the photograph, which is from the colonial era, from the 1930, 1940 probably, old archive document. Now in that photograph of the celebration, I'm changing the narrative in inserting a flower where they are seen as heroines. They are seen like they're going to use their voice, or to use the image, the power of the image, to change the narrative, to change the reality today about women. And those photographs.
The presentation, so we will see more of those.
I hesitated actually. Sorry, yeah.
No, please go on.
No, it's fine. This is the other side of the coin. You know, you are promised you are going to be a woman, tomorrow you will be a woman. And then in the same chapel, we show now the reality. She's probably less than 15 years old, and she's so vulnerable and so exposed. And there I cover the genitalia with the flower, which shows which hides the injury. And it's interesting to see the two sequences within the female mutilation, where you see the celebration, and I have transformed it as a campaign, actually.
What I also like in these images is that, contrary to what we usually tend to look at, everything that comes from certain countries in the Western world, in certain countries where we feel we have the right to look at everything, you've actually covered and made and reconstructed the beauty of the privacy also of a moment or of a body of a woman that should decide what should be visible, what should be done with our image.
We are looking at now the Pardonne-moi project that was made in collaboration with women, reform cutters from the South Senegal and Cross River in Nigeria. We worked as well with Kenya doing embroidery, so there's 3 countries involved. This one actually represents a full testimony, but there is another photograph, I think, where, well, that's in my studio, where we can see the 100 of words that have been sewed on a white canvas, kind of, you know, I'm writing now a new story. And what I wanted to do there is to bring the reform cutters, which they are as well survivors.
I just want to add something because I'm not sure everybody really understood well, and I really want to highlight this project because I found it very powerful and important in the way you interact. Not only you, let's say, express yourself through what your art directs you to do, but also you share your vision with people that are involved, and you actually you bring it into their life. Basically, what you did was you contacted somehow women that had been cutters, and that, as you were saying, normally we would place them in the role of perpetrators against the victims, but actually, as you were correctly saying, they are victims as well. They are victims of their history, of their society, of their environment, and the moment they understand or learn as well how can you recover from a circumstance like that in your life. And again, this is a situation in which I see art came into direct contact with this and gave an instrument to those women, right?
I think what is interesting in the Pardonne-moi project, which is the embroidery, is that the word arrived to my studio through WhatsApp. All those hundred of words from the world, and what was interesting is to create that kind of space where the reform cutters would be perceived as survivor, and will be doing the sewing the word of the woman of the world. And that created kind of a space of reparation. It created an understanding that it was kind of abandon the knife and take the needle. And that repairing was
to repair
act. It makes me think of Joanna, actually, about the repetition of that, and you come in a kind of a space of meditation where for those women, I think it was very important. And that's why I call it Pardonne-moi, because they didn't know any better.
And
it's a reparation.
The same gesture that once produced so much pain can, in this case, being utilized as an act of reparation, as you were saying, and survival for these women as well.
The interaction with with the participation of the public, was very, very active when they were going into the space. And the lights of yellow, for me, meant a lot. So the yellow is a force of transformation, is a force actually of the strongest desire. It is, as Joanna said, it is in our gut. And that's why the yellow, all the sewing was done with the yellow, and as well, it was echoing and resonating with Field of Light, which is the last part of the flower project, where the words of the survivor now are enlightened. And to put that in conversation with the word is so important. La parole est tellement importante.
Because what I really like about your project, and that is so inspiring, is that there is an empathetic dimension to the topic. It's not pointing your finger to who is bad and who is good, or who should be. It's without anger or rage, as you said, but it's like a 360 exploration of the topic, and it's very complete, and it's also almost a way to, as I feel, as I understand, it's also a way to heal as well the people who thought that it was a good thing to do before. So it's very human and very generous as a project, and I think that something great is coming out of it. And on another dimension, because this the fact that these women who were were practicing yes, now the fact that they are embroidering now, it's the ones who were
the perpetrators, I think we say.
The perpetrators are also healing, and that's the best, because with this project you don't forget the ones who are supposed to be bad, because yes, nobody is supposed to be bad actually. And there's always a way to link up things and to heal the whole community, not only the ones who were mutilated.
That's why I have the neon I am, because the I am means we are, really. We saw it a little bit previously, and when I work with the neon with the word I am, because I believe that as artists, it is the same with Gerard and Joanna. We are speaking as contemporary artists. It's not the I anymore. We have dropped that quite a while ago. It has become the we. The we is much more powerful. And when we are talking about responsibility for the world and how to overcome obstacles, we have to be many. We can't, of course, it starts individually, but the we is so much more powerful.
Yeah. I want to take the opportunity to start from this word that you just said, the we, to ask a question to Gerald. And because I know that we've been talking about the connection, the strong presence of art in society, in everyday life. And I know that you, as a contemporary artist, you've been very involved, let's say personally, in finding a way of expressing yourself as an artist in a moment where we've been going through a global pandemic. And Joanna was saying before, at that time, she didn't really think about working for exhibitions per se, as we were used to do, but more for herself or more for finding a way of dealing with what was happening. And I know that you yourself have had kind of a similar experience. You have the opportunity to use your art to deal somehow with the pandemic, not only on an artistic level, let's say?
Oh, wow. First, I have been quite, been emotional. I mean, I've never listened to anything like this before. Or 1,000 words, caught me up here, and I could literally hear the voice of my daughter in every voice there, and it was very touching. And I've had this research she's doing, and I think it's very important. Before I even talk about that, about what you asked, let me also say that something about the picture, the photo that she showed, touched the face of the girl and the flower. There are two distant contrasts that are also complementary. I think that's fantastic. And that's where the rage took off from, and it stopped existing. And when Joanne's video played, I saw myself in it. I mean, it was like the life I experienced during the pandemic. The pandemic for me was, and for everyone really, a very shocking time. The first 2 months, as an artist, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even bring my mind to work. I had a project at that time, which I think is very significant, because as an artist, if you can't, artists thrive on imagination, and that is why if you cannot move around, sometimes you feel like you're boxed in and you can't express yourself even as you want to. And so something came up at that time called Artex puzzles, puzzles with purpose. It was pioneered by Rachel Van Chelte. Yeah, she's a curator and editor in large for Vogue International, Metropolitan Magazine, and Urban Mind. So the idea she came up with really resonated with me, because it was about to solve a few problems, especially the fact that during the pandemic, you couldn't really go anywhere, the lockdown especially. And so again, we started to think, what do I do? And so we had existing artworks, and then she proposed creating puzzles with pictures of artworks that we already had. And that was very innovative, it's a creative, innovative solution to our new obstacle. This is significant for me because during the pandemic, first of all, many people couldn't create. The mental capability, the materials, the space, you had to go to your home. If you had your studio away from your home, then it was tough to even walk. Many people were looking for what to do. And it was not a good mental state to stay for that period if you didn't engage yourself creatively. And so the puzzle solved the problem there. It created a form of play and a form of the use of your mind to recreate these artworks and as a puzzle. Secondly, it provided an engagement for the brain. We understand what happened at that pandemic period, the lockdown. There were a lot of cases of mental health issues because people also were not thinking right. The third thing I think it helped to create was that it provided funding for charities, percentage of the proceeds, because they were supposed to be sold. And then percentage of the proceeds will go to COVID-19 charities, to communities, and especially to artists who didn't, because we all know what happened economically, people couldn't find materials, people couldn't really get it. So some communities, some artists have got some stipends to continue to do something while they're waiting. And so for me, that was a really beautiful thing. Again, because the lockdown was there were a few other things. There was lockdown, the exhibitions didn't hold anymore. We had some virtual and some digitalized solutions that came up, but it wasn't as it used to be. And so the artists also had to get funds. And so that was also an interesting thing because it provided another source of income for the artists. But what really touches me most about it is the fact that, there was a creative, innovative solution that was not there before, turning the artworks not just to print, because the collectors' limited editions could be put up like prints, even though they are puzzles. And again, it provided something for collectors who love to collect art to also hold as precious like an artwork. I had to make my statement because as an artist, you are also a subtle activist, or just like Oweto's works, pinpointing things that we need to talk about and we need to also dialogue about and even change. So I had to talk about the pandemic. And so the exhibition, which is what you see here rolling through, was titled Epokripo. That's in my language. Epokripo means a dance, but it is also titled Epokripo, the dance of the spirits, because we're in a pandemic and we're dancing to a beat that we didn't understand, we didn't know, we're yet learning. And where I come from, which is the eastern part of Nigeria, if things like this happen, which they call the act, which we now call act of God, it is often attributed to the anger of the spirits, or the spirits want to be appeased. And so when things like this erupt, and maybe it's affecting a community or a people, it could be something natural, and because we don't understand it, we say you are dancing the dance of the spirit. Like what you see here is titled Women Rule the World. I found out that during the pandemic, women played a vital role in trying to keep, especially those in the front line. They had to go to the front line. Some of them had to cater for families at the same time. Some had children to look after, and then they had to go look after. And so I looked at the way they moved and the way they brought sanity in this period, and that's why that work there was titled Women Rule the World. This is titled Blue Moon because we haven't seen a blue moon yet, but the pandemic was closest to a blue moon that I've ever seen in my life. And so I had to, and yet we're dancing in it. The metaphor is simple, that it is a blue moon, we're in it, we have to dance to the tunes, and in dancing to the tunes, enjoy the blue moon. And so it wasn't strange anymore, like we have tried to, the world is now catching up with it and dealing with it in one way or the other, and we're coming back to normal again, even though it will never be the same again. But Blue Moon told our story that we found ourselves in the blue moon, but we have to dance the dance of the spirit in it. And in dancing, we begin to come together to find a solution. Eguewa is a regatta that we have in where I come from, paddles with one voice. The regatta is a musical performance where we paddle together, dancing on the lake. And if you miss the stroke while you dance, it could topple the boat. And so at the point we found ourselves, if you see the work, you find out that I merged a lot of, because in the pandemic, I couldn't walk. So I did something. I brought every work I could find in my studio, and I started to rework them and remerge them. And that's why you see them as if they're interwoven with each other. And that's what happened even in the pandemic. We became our brother's keepers at once. Nobody talked about wars anymore. It was a terrible time, and yet it was a brotherly agreeable time. So paddles with one voice is that suddenly the world is paddling with one voice. The boat is moving and in one direction. We all wanted a solution. We loved ourselves. We loved the world. We wanted to keep moving. We didn't want a catastrophe. And everyone agreed. I do not think we need things like the pandemic to agree. And so Paddles with One Voice talked about how we can speak with one voice even though we're in a pandemic. So I had to do a piece titled Men Become Men, because suddenly everybody woke up and you wanted a solution to this thing. And everybody was affected everywhere, even if you were so rich or you were not so rich, even if there was no color. You can see there were different colors there of people. There was no tribe, there was no sentiments, there was no race, there was nothing. And men just came out to become men. And so I had to, and then of course we were laid bare. You look at the picture there, you see, suddenly we became naked. You could tell that we were just humans. There was nothing else but humans. So that's why I use that metaphor you see there. I did a three-piece together that I called I came, I saw, and I danced. But the beautiful thing is this: we are now dancing to the rhythm, not against the rhythm anymore. We're not too confused anymore with the music that has been played. We now even almost can dictate the next beat, and then we quickly dance to the tune. So I think we have conquered because we came together. We have almost conquered because we all agreed. Did it have to take a pandemic for all of us to agree? Probably not. But I mean, this is something to tell us that if we agree, we could conquer any enemy. Yeah, anyone. As an artist, I agree with Joanna. The work is more important than what the work will do. The process is very important. In the process, art for me is therapy. I survived the pandemic because I'm an artist. The first 2 months, I didn't know what I was thinking. So I gradually walked back to the studio, and fortunately my studio is near my house, and so I could walk down, and I started to look at the works again, and sanity began to show up. So the work and the process is much more important than probably how much you're going to sell it, if you're going to even exhibit it. At first, the story is told. I'm a storyteller, and so I tell every artist, you have to keep working, and there's no substitute for it. You have to keep innovating. There is also no substitute for that. You have to also keep thinking of how to help your materials say what they want to say. Every material wants to say something. We are just a bridge. Every material wants to speak. Joanna's photographs want to say something. She just comes in and she opens them up, and they're saying what they wanted to say since they were born, and nobody was helping them say it. And your first thought is not where it's going to be exhibited. No, your first thought is tell your story. And you are your first, like she said, I agree completely. Art for me is therapy. You are your first audience. And so if you enjoy it, everyone will.
And continuing this nice exchange that is, the basis also of this. Yes.
I would like to tell Gerald that I knew his work from afar, but I've never had the occasion to meet him. I am inspired by the fact that he repurposed, he reworked his work, which is something that is for some artists quite scary, to dismantle a work, to undo a work, to do another one. It's very bold and it's inspiring, and congratulations.
Thank you. I love it.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. Yeah. I believe that artworks are like children or human beings, and if they wear a certain attire for a while, the attire should be changed as long as they're there. If they wear a certain hair, and why can't we just do something to the hair? And guess what? Sometimes they also want companion. So why should we?
It's bold.
Because exactly, they want companion, and so why not? Maybe we could just pair them up, make them happy, make them find love or something. For me, it's organic. There's no hard and fast rule. It's different. It's life. You cannot, like a landscape, there's no straight line. Now that's where I get excited. I never know the outcome. So I'm so excited because, I mean, I'm dabbling, I'm jumping, and I don't know the outcome. That excitement, the mystery, for me first.
What I also find very interesting is that at the end, we always talk about mental health, right? The well-being of the artist first, also, because the artist is the first that can find himself facing this void of creative void and uncertainty, and then in learning how to trust themselves in overcoming this void, then they can share it with other as well.
How do you normally navigate those spaces, which are obviously very complex and very, I would say, vulnerable, to make sure that your intervention and your collection of data or material does not interfere with those communities? I mean, it would be interesting to know what is your perspective, maybe your want, or particularly with the difficulty of the topic that you often work with. What is the best way, in your experience, of trying to be very close to the story, but equally be very careful on how to tell that story?
I think the ways that we approach the community at the grassroots level, the ONG was extremely important, because we were developed to develop trust. And we were able then to gain a reputation. Therefore, when the institution started to showcase the voices and the images, which are highly difficult images, I think each time that an institution showcased the work, it gave it a stamp of validation each time. Salzmoka, Macal, Madre, and now Paul-et-Loire. And hopefully, I know that, if everything goes well, and again, it's not a question of for now the artist to travel or not. The important thing is that the work will be seen wherever in the world. But I think I've answered. I hope I've answered this way. There is not precise way. We're always at risk as well. The artist is at risk when we're exposing that material. We're at risk. We have to be able to respond. The ratio of people involved with the female genital mutilation visiting the space, I cannot know. What I know is how important it has been to follow every exhibition with a panel, with a conversation, with intellectual, with scholar, with the one at Salzmoka, for instance. We had an activist that came from Kenya, 24 years old, and she was one of the first young women in her community that had not been mutilated, but who had carry on with the ritual of le passage of age, the ritual of passage, without being mutilated. Because when she was 8 years old and she told that story during the panel, she told her mother, Mommy, please, if you love me. For many years, I've been putting in place, facilitating the 1000 Voices extract, which is an educational version that has been heard every 6th of February, which is the International Day Against Female Genital Mutilation. And we've made sure that it was reaching schools in the community that are affected. It's extremely important for me to understand that there is a beginning and there is a development of the whole project, but it's always bouncing back and going back, even though it has been heard in a center of culture, but it goes beyond the wall of the museum, beyond the safe place, going back to the community.
The importance and this lack at the moment of interaction with your public.
What I felt the most, the first thing that I felt about these times, these COVID times, this pandemic, is that we are all connected. We are interconnected. Whether we want it or not, we impact each other. The fact that we had to be cautious and not touch people we love, with whom we don't live, or people who to always keep in mind that we could be a danger for someone else. Then artistically, it's the same. Doing something that will impact someone who is way in another place of the world, and then that they can feel through the work. To me, it's amazing, and that's the most important thing that we have as artists, that we can share and get from other artists and from people, and from the audience as well, from the feedbacks that we get from people seeing our work.
Okay, let me also say that although the virtual and digitalized solutions offered some some solution, and that was fantastic, because I mean, what else could we have done? But there's something I find out about an artwork and an audience coming physically to interact. You see, when someone contacts, and because they contact an artwork physically, something happens. It's like procreation. And so for an artwork, an energy is emitting already. A creative energy is emitting. A feeling from the artist like life. And then another person comes and views this thing physically. Now something happens there. Two energies erupt. These two energies create a thought energy, which, because we have not studied, we don't see it. Yes, there was a solution, virtual and digital, fantastic. I mean, we have to do something quickly or we'll disappear. But it will not take the place of physical visualizing of the work. Because, for instance, I do wood. There's work behind me that you see there. You can't feel that energy. If you walk in here, you will stand there for an hour, because
you can
every
smell.
stroke, there's a good, there's metal, there's nails, there's burning, there's chiseling, and you can even look at my hands also and see the way it's affected my fingers. Now that's a different ball game.
What Gerald mentioned highlights where this whole program of encounters come from. You know, the importance of casual encounters. We would not be around this virtual table today if we had not, you know, if I had not walked by absolute chance in 2018 into Sir Jatuque Clottey studio in Accra, just after a mission which had nothing to do with the art. You know, I know nothing about contemporary arts. I came to the table, you know, as a genuine person interested in learning more. And over the past 3 years, you were the one who built that bridge with somebody who knew absolutely nothing about your world and made it so accessible. And I think this is also a very important message for the solution for the future. There is an element which has been somehow problematic and highlighted by other people, which is the accessibility of the contemporary arts world. You know, it's perceived as being something for the rich and famous. You know, you go to a big gallery and to look at some of your work only if you can afford buying it. That's not the case, right? The case is about engaging with arts, no matter what is the real basic interest. And I believe what your arts is doing, not only necessarily through your main gallery exhibition, but also through your social media, through the messages that you send, through the communication that you're having broadly, is the fact that people can really engage with the message. They can feel it close to each other. And this is, you know, from a personal perspective, you know, at a time of difficulty, finding a way to connect with people who may not necessarily belong to your world, actually inspire new generation of potential artists, inspire people in actually learning about, you know, the messages that you are giving. And so it's about removing those mental barriers that very often we've built. But I think what personally I've taken, and the feedback I've received from those who have attended this series of panel, is that thanks to the very accessible way you share your stories, your artistic practice, your willingness to actually be open to those conversations, have an impact on everyday life, on people who may just look at the color of a specific picture and then be drawn into the story.
And what I just want to add as a closing comment is that I was really impressed by something that Gerald said before, which was we needed this pandemic to agree, but then in the end we should learn that we don't need the pandemic to agree. And I thought, going back to the title of this conversation that we were having, which was finding creative solutions to new obstacles, I think art can be one of these solutions that can help us remember through the experience of sharing art, learn also. And at the same time, the most important thing is not feeling powerless or full of anger and defeated, but find a way through art, with the artists, observing art, to in the end find a solution that can simply be at least being able to address the problem and find alternatives, and not deciding who's right or who's wrong, just how to go on, you know, and share, as Joanna was saying in the beginning. How do we share together, we as a community, artists and non-artists? So thank you very much to all of you anyway, because we've learned and we've grown, I think, by meeting each other and by looking at your art.
It's about throwing a little stone in the water and having the ripple effect coming out of it.